ask any question, please raise your hand and or write in the chat directly, and we will give you then the floor to really ask your question later. And also, yeah, so the breakout rooms, we will explain to you how it works a bit later when it will be time for these breakout rooms. So first, I wanted to just explain to you what this Erasmus Plus project LEZ4All is about, what's the context of this study that will be presented to you. So the LEZ4All project comes from a basic observation that LEZs are necessary to improve the air quality in urban areas. But at the same time, by banning the most outdated and polluted vehicles, it is kind of automatically excluding the most vulnerable people who can't afford to change their car or to change their means of transport. And because it deals with Erasmus Plus, it's a program which is really about trainings, trainings for scholars or professionals. And in this project, we are focusing on different kinds of professionals. The mobility professionals who are basically implementing the LEZs and the UVARs in the different metropolis and urban areas. And at the same time, the social workers who are supporting the most vulnerable people and also supporting them when they need to change their mobility means, for instance. So and what we've seen in France is that these two words, so the mobility, also the environmental professional and the social professionals, they do not know each other, they do not communicate well. And when it comes to LEZ, it's a big problem when implementing LEZ that these different words do not speak together. And so when we talked about that with our friends in Brussels or in Belgium in general, and also in Spain, in Madrid and Barcelona, we realized that it's exactly the same problem in all these countries. And that's why we wanted to create this LEZ4All project, so that basically the objective is to raise awareness among the mobility and environmental professional, to inform the social sector professionals about how the LEZ works, what are the mobility problems of the most vulnerable, and also, because it's a European project, to create synergies among the stakeholders from different cities and countries who are facing the same challenges. So there are four main project partners. So in addition to the University of Antwerp and Auxilia that I already mentioned, there is Bruxelles Environnement and AMB, the Area Metropolitana de Barcelona. And we have two associated partners, the Métropole de Lyon in France and the city of Madrid in Spain. In addition to that, so we have four key actions. The first one is this quantitative and qualitative study that will be presented to you today. The objective of this study was to understand what are the training needs of this professional. And based on these training needs, we will create training modules in the next steps. And we also are implementing few tests. There is a best practice exchange between the different partners. And so we are implementing some tests right now in Brussels and Barcelona mainly. And of course, because it's a European project, we are communicating a lot, informing a lot, and that's a big part of our project also to communicate on our results. So that's for the general presentation, and at the very end, I will show you what are the next steps, especially the training modules. Some training modules will be organized very soon, and but we will explain that to you a bit later. But now, Thomas and Lisa, the floor is yours if you would like to share the training result, the study results. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, thanks, Clara, for the introduction. And indeed, we will present some results of a questionnaire and interviews. Since, training, we first have to consider what kind of training for which persons. And of course, that we want to do that on the basis of some evidence. So the focus is on the needs of professionals. So we do not in this project do not train the population which is affected by the vehicle restrictions in different cities. It's about all kinds of professionals, and as Clara already mentioned, it is wide range. It can be someone working in the Department of Transport, but also someone in social services or in a non-for-profit organization supporting citizens. So all kinds of professionals are involved in the low emission zone ecosystem. So we have a kind of central research question. So these LEZ professionals, the low emission zone professionals, it's very inclusive who can be a part of that group, so our target group. It's about training needs. So we want to train people or develop tools to train people, which covers just knowledge, but also attitudes and other competences, so the skills of them. Since we believe that these professionals have an influence on the reality that people face when trying to move around in a city. And so on the basis of this research question, we also have a kind of conceptual framework, which you see here, and needs is on the one hand perceived by the professionals, their experienced needs, so that's what we'll also tell something about that later. So if you see on the right hand side of the picture, well, if you have given that levels of car dependency are high in many places in Europe and elsewhere, if you restrict access by car, it might have a social impact. So some groups in society might be affected by it since they have more difficulties in entering, for instance, a city center and reaching services and activities as well as family and friends, which depends on their background, whether they are in a vulnerable situation, where they live. And so all these characteristics influence the impact. But what the focus of this project is on the left-hand side. And there's a group of LEZ professionals and ecosystems, can be policymakers, civil servants, people working for a private company, but working also in different fields, can be in transport and mobility, urban planning, the environment, social services, citizen services, training. And yeah, Lisa and I work for a university, for instance. We are also part of the ecosystem since we write and about low emission zones. We also do teaching at universities, of course. And this can have an influence on the situation of people. And to look for what do we need as training material? Well, it's the audience of the training. And so they have personal characteristics, experiences. Important things are also, do you have regular contact with citizens? For instance, if you're in a call center and you get each day lots of phone calls from people, yeah, how does a LEZ work, and who are puzzling to get around? Well, they have a different experience than professionals who do more the policy work and for instance, the legal framework, develop that. These are different persons. That's something we have to take into account. And they all have different competences. Their educational background differs. The knowledge they have about the low emission zone, their skills in working with people and developing. So that's what we have to consider when developing training material. And how did we investigate this, or how did we assess this? Well, there was first an exploratory phase. Unsurprisingly, we consulted the academic literature since we still like reading to know more what has been written about low emission zones and urban vehicle access restrictions. But also there were 12 interviews with key informants who have a good view on a LEZ policy in their region. It was also very informative. So also in this exploratory phase, and yeah, project partners have also experienced, and also the associated partners. So all that knowledge was in the first phase brought together. The second phase was a survey. So some of you might have got this one in your mailbox. Thanks for filling out the survey if you did, in which were different sets of questions on their perceived, experienced needs for more training, for information. There were a couple of questions about their knowledge about the topic, and some background characteristics, their employment. So that was all surveyed, and all this data is collected. We are also analyzing the results of the survey, and this will lead to a more synthesis of it. What are the needs? How to organize trainings? And also it's about building a network. Since, as was already mentioned by Clara, it's bringing, one of the needs is bringing people from different silos or departments together. So that's what's also important. It's not just organizing a class, it's also building a network and an ecosystem around this topic. And now I will pass the word to Lisa, who will present some of the results of especially of the survey, but also of the interviews.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, if we look at if we dive into the results of our study, first and foremost, it's important to highlight that both from interviews and survey, it was clear that many professionals find training very relevant on this topic. Noteworthy is that people who are in direct contact, I mean, there was only 5% of the survey participants that did not find training relevant. The majority of those who didn't find training relevant were working directly with citizens, so more in what we call front office positions. Interesting to see is also that the self-identification of professionals in the survey of needs, training needs, coincided with the assessment of how other professionals see training needs. So we mainly see the highest training needs occur for people working on topics of mobility, on urban planning, environment, and so people who work more in policy development, let's say, so not those in, not that much those in citizen contact. Of course, training needs are overall high, or were identified as being high. And then the survey structure was also built in a way, of course, where we were trying to identify certain needs, certain gaps in competences. This made participants already aware of certain training, more aware of certain training needs they might have. And then when we were looking, as also this participant answered, and when we were inquiring then specifically about possible learning opportunities that professionals themselves saw, there was a lot of response, and it went very broad in what kind of training they considered useful themselves. Some was really based on knowledge acquisition, let's say, but there were also many suggestions for very practical or interactive trainings, for example, user journeys, so following people with certain disadvantages in mobility on their daily travel. So then what we also found is that there are quite a lot of needs that are actually overarching over this diverse population of professionals. And we wanted to highlight first these needs because we might assume, or we started from an hypothesis that there were many needs that would be specific for certain professionals, but actually the overall needs were quite common. First, there is the understanding or better understanding of barriers and challenges in mobility for people that might find themselves in disadvantaged positions when it comes to mobility. Then another need that was identified is intersectoral collaboration, as Thomas already mentioned as well. So it turned out that many professionals do find it challenging to connect with others in other sectors. There's a question on how to implement, for example, or how to establish communication mechanisms between people working with citizens and people developing and implementing policies. But also there were knowledge needs, specifically on the social aspects of mobility. So, for example, the concept of mobility poverty was not necessarily known by many people, but also facts on and factors that can contribute to this being in this disadvantaged position when it comes to mobility, so experiencing restrictions in mobility. For each of these different needs, they're based on different parts of the assessment of the survey. This information is also included on the slides, but I'll gloss over them sometimes a bit more fast to also make sure that we have enough time for discussion afterwards. But so, for example, why we highlight this need for the understanding of barriers and challenges in mobility is because we found that well, in general, people are very used to start from their personal experience, especially when it comes to mobility. And very few of the survey participants indicated that they experience any impact of car-restrictive policies themselves in their personal environment. Neither do they come into contact with situations themselves or people close to them that could actually cause a higher vulnerability to restricted mobility. So this also emphasizes the need for social empathy, to be able to place yourself in another position and think about how other people in the population might experience certain restrictions and how they might make certain mobility decisions in different ways than in your own personal experience. Two other needs that we identified is the question on how to work on mobility policy frameworks that are socially just. The question there that was often recurring is kind of if support measures are not taken up, would there be alternative approaches that could work? This is very much based also on the assessment that would on the part of the survey where we saw that there is not a lot of trust in the effectiveness of support measures that are currently taking alongside car restrictive policies to actually protect people in disadvantaged positions for more than average negative effects from such policies. And also a lot of professionals are concerned to a certain extent about possibly reinforcing social inequality by implementing car restrictive policies. So here we think it's valuable, again, that this is something where exchange can happen between the experience of people from many different professional positions and domains to tackle this challenge. And as a last common need, we want to highlight the challenging of personal attitudes and biases. We saw a lot of differences on prioritization of car accessibility for everyone in the center. So to also, for example, have people with challenging job hours to be able to always access, or people with disabilities to be able to easily access the locations where they have to be, versus health concerns for the urban population, environmental protection, livable spaces in the center. Also the role of the government in mobility policies. And so, for example, one of the ways that this could be done would be through discussion workshops. Of course, not all needs that we identified were the same for the entire population. We did see certain profiles with specific needs arise from the data of the survey, specifically in this case. And so we identified 5 different profiles. In our survey sample, these had slightly differentiating demographics as well. So there were some different characteristics. They might have an impact on the results that we found, of course. So they are included in the presentation. But for overall, I'll just focus mainly on the profiles that we saw. So on the one hand, we have the LEZ professionals who work in regular contact with citizens. This is already mentioned before, like for example, people working at citizen services desk, people who work in a call center. We call this front office jobs. Then we also have professionals working more in back office jobs. These are people that are in their line of work not having, don't have a lot of contact with citizens, so never or very occasionally, let's say less than once a month. We assume that these professionals work more on, for example, policy development and implementation, but could also work in management in the private sector, for example. The other profiles are based on different professional domains. There we identified 3 big categories. One is professionals working in social topics and citizen services. Important here, what we found is that here the interest in training is the lowest. They do have more regular contact with citizens than the overall survey sample. They experience more car dependency themselves as well. And they have a slightly lower contextual understanding of systemic barriers. The second group are those professionals working in the field of mobility. As mentioned earlier, training need is very highly identified here. They have less contact with citizens. They also have the least personal effect from car restrictive policies. They have a very positive, the most positive attitude towards government intervention on mobility, which is not surprising. And they have less contact with citizens. The final group we identified is people who work in different topics related to urban planning, environment, public space. Again, here we see not as much contact with citizens. Also almost no cross-sectoral collaboration, but they do score very high on the knowledge component. So they are highly knowledgeable on the topics that we questioned. They have a prioritization of more urban livability. So let's say health concerns, and environmental concerns over the car accessibility of urban centers. And they are the most convinced of the mitigating effect of support measures that are part of car restrictive policies. Which needs did we find for these different profiles? So when it comes to the front office, the survey results show that they would benefit mainly from, or most from, training on different aspects of LEZ regulation. So both very practical, what are the rules, where to find up-to-date information on regulations, which exceptions exist, what are support measures that exist, and how to apply for them. But not only these practical elements are important, they also show a need to understand the reasoning behind policy choices and to understand benefits that can come from car restrictive regulations, because they feel also responsible for being able to explain well these reasons and benefits to a larger audience. Secondly, there were 2 communication needs that were highlighted. One is strategies to communicate with policymakers, to communicate with people who are not in direct contact with citizens. So both for, let's say, questions to better understand certain policies, but also for feedback. For example, when a certain effect or a certain consequence is seen in their contact with citizens, how can they give this feedback back to the people who are responsible for policies? And then the second communication need was on the interaction with people themselves, with citizens, specifically those who are, for example, in distress about mobility policies, who might experience mobility restrictions, who are in these kind of disadvantaged positions. How can interactions stay positive, and respectful, and how can they help people who find themselves in distress? When it comes to back office, needs are more looking at understanding of specifically their social support systems were in need that often recurred. So are all population group reachable? Are there people staying under the radar? What if people don't have access to certain means that are necessary to be able to benefit from support measures or exceptions. And here we also find that the need was higher for strategies for collaboration with other sectors. Finally, when it comes to professional domains, we see that the needs from the people working in mobility, urban planning and environment are more similar. Their perspective taking was a need that occurred. So both being able to look at on a personal scale, looking at other people's positions. So very much the social empathy that was said before, but also more on a societal scale, perspective taking from different population at different population groups. Another need there was the increasing the awareness and giving increasing competence on risk management of exacerbating social inequalities with sustainable policies such as car restrictive policies. On the other hand, so the professionals working in the social sector, professionals working more on citizen services, might need more encouragement to participate in trainings since they are less convinced that trainings are relevant for them. So the question there is, how can we make them aware that they have an influence on social effects of mobility policies. And also awareness on car dependency might be something to address there. This could be, for example, also combined with a familiarization with other mobility options and services. If we expect people working with citizens to be able to support them and assist them in finding, in changing their travel behavior, that might be very challenging if you yourself are mainly relying on car to do all your travels. Then to conclude our findings, a few general reflections we have on this study. First, we are aware that probably there is a certain self-selection occurring. Participants of the survey, participants that might be interested in training, will already probably have a certain level of awareness on the issue of social impact of car restrictive policies. The question is what to do with those professionals that have no awareness at all at this point. Then, of course, we found that this is a very relevant issue for many professionals. We had a very high engagement in interviews. There was a high response rate, higher than expected in the survey, with a lot of valuable answers. There was also, wherever there was room for additional remarks, we got a lot of information and input. So I think this we can take this as a confirmation that this is a relevant topic we're working on. Then, as final conclusions, again, quickly highlight that there were more needs that are identified as common across different professional domains and across different job positions than there are specific needs for specific topics. This means that there's also the possibility or maybe the need to organize trainings that can be accessed for professionals from very different backgrounds, thus also allowing, again, collaboration and exchange between these different professional sectors. Training is about knowledge acquisition, but as much about skills and attitudes as well. And then as a final remark, we'd like to highlight that we found in our first part of research that the political setup of local governments has also a considerable influence on how much awareness and energy is dedicated to social effects of sustainable policies, such as car restrictive policies. And so this political landscape can change, of course, with every new election. So what we're aiming to do, or what we should aim with this project, is how can we anchor this awareness within public authorities and public administrations, regardless of political choices. That was, in short, the findings that we had in the study. Now, first, we'd like to open the floor for questions, maybe from the audience. I don't see if anyone is raising their hand. Auxilia?
No, I don't think so. So if not, I suggest that we just move to the breakout rooms, and there maybe if there are questions, we could just take them in small groups. Also in our native languages, maybe it's sometimes easier. So for the breakout rooms, I think it's the next slide, Lisa.
Yes.
You can see at the top, at the top of your screen, there is, so it's a style in French, but you can find the same icon. You just click on this icon and you will see that there are 4 breakout rooms in different languages. So please click on your breakout room. And you can join the room of your native language or the language you would like to speak. And we just meet there and we will have a short discussion. Also, the idea for us is to understand what are your needs and if you agree with what has been said. So that's what we would like to understand. But no pressure. If you don't want to speak in the breakout rooms, you can also just listen. And so just we meet in the breakout rooms. So please, select your breakout room now. So
Flemish and English.
Ja. Oh. Voilà, dan gaan wij naar de hoofdkamer terug.
I think everybody's back in the main room. Okay, great. Lisa, can you once more share your screen if possible, or thank you.
Just a second. Oh, sorry.
The Dutchman's matter. Thank you very much. Thank you first for sharing your comments and your thoughts in the breakout rooms. As mentioned, at least in the French breakout rooms, we will of course take good notes of what you've told us in these breakout rooms. Mentimeter, we've registered what were your results, and we will use that to conclude also the study that the University of Antwerp is currently finishing. So the study will be published soon, right, Lisa? I think in October at least. So you will find it on our website. So if you would like to stay connected to the project, we've got a website where we will find the study. We also have LinkedIn. We have first a web LinkedIn page, but also a network, a group, a closed group for the professionals. So if you would like to join us there, this group, the aim of the group is to share best practices, also questions, thoughts, events that are interesting for the professionals in mobility or social sectors. So do not hesitate to join these groups. They are in the discussion in the chat. We just put the URL to these websites and groups. You can also just write me an email if you have any question. Do not hesitate. And so the next steps of our project. So right now, as mentioned at the very beginning, there are three tests, being tested in Barcelona and in Brussels. So it's one test is on creating a digital tool. So in Barcelona, for the metropolis, so in Brussels and Barcelona, there is another test right now to organize a mobility council in Barcelona based on the mobility coach of Brussels. And in Brussels, they are also testing the car sharing, how to touch more the most vulnerable with car sharing, because they realize that car sharing is not really tackling the needs of the most vulnerables. So that's the test. They are ongoing, and we will share the results of them next year during the second webinar, and you will be, of course, invited to this webinar. In the meantime, there will be training tests, modules in Barcelona, Brussels, Lyon, Paris, Bordeaux, at least in spring 2026. So if you would like to be a beta tester, you're very welcome. So we will contact you also to organize these sessions. And based on that, the final training modules will be elaborated at the end of the project in October. And the final event, you can also already note that in September 2026, there will be a final event in Brussels, in the premises, I think, in Brussels Environnement, but let's see next year. But for the training modules, if you're interested, do not hesitate to let us know. And yes, the presentation will be shared to all the people who attended the meeting today. We have your email addresses, so we will share the presentation. No problem.
As well as the replay.
as well as the replay, yes, if you would like to have the replay. And it will all be on LinkedIn and the website, so do not hesitate to go there. So if you have any question, you can still ask it right now. Otherwise, just write us an email and we will answer to you. That's okay. So thank you very much. Thank you for today, for being with us. And so we keep in touch and talk to you very soon. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
nice day. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
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 Thank you.